Welcome back to the Sera podcast, and today's guest, we have fertility coach Alex Smith. Alex, delighted that you're here today. Thank you so much for coming on to talk all things fertility. Massive hot topic. We get reams and reams of communication about fertility at Sera across our community. Big story at the moment is, of course, Jess Potter from Married at First Sight. She has just had her success story with IVF. So it's in circulation, lots and lots of talk about fertility. I'm going to delve straight in there because you're going to be able to answer this question beautifully. Fertility is on the decline, and why is that?
So there's so many different factors, and a lot of it is down to the way we are in our modern day lifestyle and the diets that we eat. You see that, obviously obesity, them types of things are on the rise. Women are, waiting longer before they have children. So then there's an age factor that comes into it. We also have stressful lifestyles as well. So stress can have a massive impact on fertility. The environments that we're exposed to as well, we're seeing an increase in the chemicals that are around us, the chemicals that we put in our skin. And there's just so many different factors that are playing a part in infertility that, we can do things to help with it. But it's just the environment and the lifestyles and the diets that we're having at the moment.
So many things in society have changed in maybe like the last 5, 10, 15, 20 years.
Yeah.
What's the biggest issue that you think we're facing fertility-wise right now?
So I suppose a lot of the people that follow me is unexplained infertility. So when you look at fertility as a whole across the UK, 1 in 7 couples struggle to get pregnant, which is really quite a big number. So if you look at the numbers, it's roughly about 325 million, which is the size of like Liverpool, Manchester and Birmingham combined. And it's within that, like 1 in 7, it's not just down to the woman as well. So, 30% is male factor infertility as well. We're seeing conditions on the rise, such as PCOS, endometriosis. And like I said, there's unexplained infertility that comes along with that as well. So people who have been trying for quite a while, who have no particular reason why they're just not getting pregnant. And they've just been told it's unexplained. So they're left very uncertain and not know what to do next.
Yeah. A lot of people in the Sera community, myself included, suffer with PCOS, endometriosis. I've got the double-edged sword. I've got both of them. And fertility, when you're going in and speaking to a gynecologist about that, the big one for my personal journey has been obesity. I went there this time last year and was told I was morbidly obese.
Okay.
Absolutely destroyed me. It was awful. I was very vocal about it with our following because I think it's really good to be transparent when you've got something that's so relatable. So I have tried really, really hard to look after my health, my well-being, my weight. But when it comes to something like polycystic ovarian syndrome, that in itself is a real struggle because there's so many factors of having polycystic ovarian syndrome that, weight loss is particularly difficult. But from the fertility aspect of it, why is it that people with PCOS struggle when it comes to getting pregnant?
Okay, so there's different types of PCOS, which is not really that commonly spoken about. But the main one is usually insulin resistance. So that's where our cells become resistant to insulin. And then when we see an increase in insulin, we see an increase in testosterone, which then prevents ovulation. So we have follicles, which will show up on a scan. And when you get diagnosed with PCOS, and what them follicles don't do, they don't mature enough to then release an egg during ovulation. So that's where we see the problems with fertility. So, women have irregular cycles, they stop, or sometimes the periods just stop. And when you say there about it can, increase weight and then women struggle, it's mainly down because of insulin resistance as well. So it's not straightforward as, cutting calories, for example. There's things that you have to do in a different way when somebody has PCOS to help them either lose weight, bring the hormones back into balance. And I think that's why women struggle quite a lot, because you tend to compare yourself to the person next to you a lot of the time and think that whatever they're doing to lose weight, you should do. And that might be the cutting the calories, doing high intensity training, that type of thing. But because you have PCOS, you have to do things slightly different. Yeah. And that's where things then start to
And what are those differences? So if someone's listening to this and they think, it sounds just like me, Alex, what can they be doing to improve their fertility with PCOS?
Okay, so when it comes down to your nutrition, there are things about balancing your blood sugars. So, some people have been brought up to be scared of fat, for example. So healthy fat is something that we shouldn't be scared of, but we do have to manage our blood sugars a lot better than others. So there's ways of doing that. So, for example, one particular method that I have with clients is something called food combining. So when you pair a carbohydrate with a healthy fat or a protein, that balances your blood sugars a lot better so they don't peak, and therefore you don't get that surge in insulin, and then that you don't have that knock-on effect of like the testosterone and, you're not ovulating and that type of thing. So sometimes it's not about what you're eating, it's how you are doing it as well. And then things like with movement is, again, helping with them blood sugars and that insulin is like 10-minute walks after you've had food. They're the types of things that can help it in different with the insulin resistance, and can help with that knock-on effect for your fertility.
And endometriosis, polycystic ovaries, God, it used to be like when I was a teenager or into my early 20s, I'd say to people, I've got PCOS, endometriosis, and they're like, what's that? Yeah. Now I feel like you walk into a room and you go, I've got PCOS, and about 15 other people put their hands up and they go, I've got that too, or I've got endometriosis, or they've got some form of issue when it comes to gynecological issues. They've got, heavy periods, bleeding, bloating, hormonal imbalance. Why is that? Why are we seeing a big sudden surge in those sorts of diagnoses?
Well, I think it's definitely more education out there, but more so from social media rather than from schools. So you're seeing that visibility through them channels, and people are more vocal about it. In the past, when you have gone to your doctors and you maybe had an irregular cycle when you were a lot younger, it was more so, okay, then to make your cycles regular, we'll put you on the pill, without any sort of, understanding of what actually PCOS is, what you can actually do to support your PCOS. Because then when it comes to that time when you want to conceive, there's impacts of the pill that, could potentially cause problems, and you've not been taught how to manage your PCOS through your diet and your lifestyle either. So, and that's why we see the struggles as well with fertility.
So many people that are now trying to actively conceive that may have been on the pill for the reasons that you've just said for like maybe up to like 20 years. Yeah. And then they're coming off it and not understanding why their bodies have so significantly changed, their mood has changed. You were saying then that there is an impact about the pill and fertility. What is that impact, if someone's been on the pill for such a long time?
Well, we're not really getting to the root cause of what's going on with the particular problems that, somebody might be experiencing. So like heavy periods, the no periods, the irregular periods. So, the pill for a long time is suppressing your natural hormones. So, you get put on maybe the combined pill or the progesterone only pill, but it's not really progesterone, it's progestin, which is a synthetic hormone. So, people think that maybe they're having a period, but they're not, they're having just a bleed. And it's absolutely, important that you do have a healthy menstrual cycle, because it then has a knock-on effect for when you get older, when you obviously want to try and conceive, but then even when you are going for, when you're going through the menopause and things like that. So it's just always good to have your hormones flowing the way they should be. And we're taught in schools so much to avoid pregnancy. So we're told what not to do, which is fine because, obviously there's reasons behind that to avoid teenage pregnancies and things like that. But then when it comes to us trying to conceive, we have no clue. We have no idea what we should be doing to get pregnant. I was reading a study yesterday, for example, and it said that when they were in 2023, when this research study was done, 43% of women who were trying to get pregnant didn't know what their fertile window was. And that's because we just we don't get told this type of stuff, which baffles me for what I do. And it could avoid a lot of people, waiting a long time to get pregnant, I suppose.
On the flip side, though, you've got massive amounts of people now using like natural tracking apps as opposed to anything like a contraceptive. Well, I mean, I'm reading some articles at the moment saying they're not really doing the job, and a lot of people are, are getting caught out and stuff. But, is that something that you would say to your clients that those natural apps and tracking your cycles, that's really important? Is that something that you would say? Or?
When they're trying to conceive, 100%, yeah. So there's something that we do called, which I recommend, is called basal body temperature tracking. So your body temperature changes when your hormones change throughout your cycle, so you can get a better idea as to when you've ovulated or if there's any problems with hormones. So for example, if we are seeing low temperatures consistently across your cycle, that can then tell us that you might not be ovulating, or there may be some problems with your thyroid. So we'd say go and get investigated for your thyroid. And then other things like when you move into the latter half of your cycle, so in the luteal phase of your cycle, if you are seeing spotting, more than 2 days before your period, maybe it's 4 days before, 5 days before, again, that can tell us that there's a problem with progesterone. So when I work with clients, it is, right, let's start tracking them temperatures, and let's as well really nail it down and look where your fertility window is, and let's see what patterns are over the next couple of months, so we can really get a good idea when the best time is for you to have intercourse.
Okay. Age, that's the one that we can't really do much about. We're all getting older.
Yeah.
You touched on it before. People are waiting a longer period of time. I remember my mum had me at 29, and that was geriatric.
Okay.
I'm now coming up to being 35, and we're starting our journey of it, and that is even more geriatric, especially when you speak to a gynecologist who tell you I remember every time going in and having investigations, whether it be PCOS, endo, my cycles were being all over the place, any of the issues I was having with pains, when are you going to have a baby? And I'm like, well, can we not just address the fact that, right now I'd quite like to just have a period every month? That'd be great. There's a lot of pressure on women to have babies before 35, because it's almost like you get to 35 and your fertility just falls off the cliff. But we've now seen this massive increase in, I don't like to use the terminology older or mature, but women who have hit a certain stage in their career and gone, right, now is the time that I want to start trying for a baby. Why is it that we use this terminology of geriatric mum? Like, where does that span? Like, where does it come from?
Because, well, in terms of geriatric, I think that's a medical term, isn't it? So I would never like to use that with any clients. But what we see is that as we're born with our eggs, and then we have menstrual cycles, and them eggs decline as we age. So that's why it becomes more difficult as we're getting older, because we begin to have fewer eggs. But what I like to say is that, a 25-year-old, and a 35-year-old will have eggs. Yeah, both have eggs. Although the 25 might have, more than the 35-year-old, you've still got eggs. And when you ovulate, you only ovulate one egg. So whether you're 25 or 35, it's still just one egg. Yeah, that comes out. What happens is, as we age, is that them eggs that you've got in your ovaries, they have been exposed to a lot more than what the 25-year-old has been. So that's where we see issues coming about with the likes of egg quality as we're getting older. So it makes it more difficult then for us to conceive. So, your environment that you've been, exposed to as you've been getting older, if you've been younger and, with smoking or alcohol and just so many different other things, obviously them eggs have been exposed to that environment for a longer period of time than a 25-year-old. So that's why, as we're aging, we do get to see them problems. And then obviously as we move into 40s, then, we start to see signs of perimenopause as well.
Do you get a lot of clientele that are of an older age?
The majority of people that come to me are between the ages of 30 and 40. Yeah.
And they're struggling to conceive naturally.
Yeah.
And nutrition-wise, what are the fundamentals that they can be doing nutrition-wise to improve their fertility chances?
Yeah. So it's a lot about, the colours that they're putting on the plates, for one. So making sure that plates are as colourful as they can be. That, I think sometimes it can be quite difficult because I do get a lot of women who come to me and say, I eat healthy anyway. Yeah. And I go, okay, that's fine. Let's have a little look. Let's, see what it is that you're eating on a daily basis and what can we do to change that? Because sometimes we have to target it in certain ways because, again, one of the main diets that are recommended when it comes to fertility is the Mediterranean diet. So one that's full of healthy fats, one that has protein in it. You're looking at your salmon, your fish, your olives, your, just all olive oils, that type of thing. But like when we've talked before about endometriosis, for example, if they come to me and say, I eat healthy anyway, I want to know, are you eating foods that are anti-inflammatory? Because endometriosis has, inflammation is a massive part of endometriosis. And that's where we see the problems. So anything that is anti-inflammatory is going to help that person, hopefully conceive.
So that's the difference. So PCOS is more to do with the ovulation aspect of things, the cycles being a little bit out of whack, whereas with endometriosis, a lot of it spans from it being inflamed.
Yeah.
And obviously people believing that they're having a cycle, but it could just be an internal bleed linked to their endometriosis.
Well, it's about also that uterine environment because there's so many different factors that we have to think about. So when I work with clients, I like to call them the pillars of conception success. So there's about 11 of them. One of them is that uterine environment. So although you might get an egg that fertilizes during intercourse, is that uterus in a healthy place for that fertilized egg to embed? If it's not, then it's not going to embed and it's just, you're going to have a period and you're not going to conceive. And that's where endometriosis comes into it, is because it is inflamed in that area and we need to try and make that the best possible place. It's like just got to be a lovely home for that growing embryo when it's turned into a baby.
Yeah, nurture it, make it look nice.
Exactly.
Do a bit of pre-nesting before the nesting. Yeah. Nutrition's always a big one, and maybe the one that is overlooked, and I know that a lot of people are shocked by this when we talk about it on other podcasts, endocrine disruptors. And people coming to me and saying, like you, I eat really healthy, I'm super active, I take all my supplements, I'm doing this particular smoothie in the morning and my green juices, and then I go, how many Jo Malone candles are you burning? And they're like, what do you mean? I've seen your Instagram, you like a good candle, or what about this one? And they don't realise, what perfume are you wearing? How many times are you squirting that on your skin a day? Endocrine disruptors, massive one.
Yeah.
Tell me about those from a professional stance.
Yeah, well, we do love a good candle, don't we?
Don't we all?
So the chemicals that are within these products have got... they are endocrine disruptors, as you quite rightly said, which means that they cause hormone imbalances. So some of them can act as estrogen. So therefore that will increase your estrogen hormone. Again, then we see some impacts of like obviously hormone imbalance, which will then have a knock-on effect on your fertility. So things like, drinking from plastics as well. So we've got BPA, which then causes problems, phthalates, again, in plastics. And then we've got parabens that are in like your skincare. So all these different chemicals can all have a knock-on effect of your hormones, but then also like infertility, as we say. So yeah, one of the biggest things I do say to clients is, you're never going to get away from every single chemical, because that is just, not achievable. But it's about how we minimize our exposure to those chemicals. And it's just simple swaps, like, swapping a plastic bottle out for a stainless steel bottle. It is swapping out your candles for a soy-based candle if you like your candles, taking out your plug-in air fresheners. Them types of things can all just really, really help, and go for more like natural skincare and natural makeup, that type of thing.
It's that thing, isn't it? You can nurture the inside, but there's also aspects of whatever you're putting on the outside too.
Yeah.
And that's why there's this real sudden increase in a lot of brands that are doing paraben free, essential oil based, more as opposed to those kind of like, fake scents, as it were. But endocrine disrupted. No one ever cottons on until it gets really, oh God, I didn't even think about that. It's been an eye opener for me during my time at Elle Sera. So you've got your age, you've got the endocrine system, you've got the nutrition aspect of things, lifestyle. You hit on it when you came to kind of like doing like those little daily walks and things like that. What sort of exercise routine can the average person do to improve their general well-being at this stage of life?
Okay. So I always recommend that they do some form of strength training, especially when it's PCOS, because strength training in the thigh area can really help with the insulin resistance. Cardio, yes, to some degree, but tailoring it to in your cycle. So in your follicular and your ovulation phase, it's better to do that type of exercise during then. High intensity training is a bit of a controversial subject at the moment because of it's got some benefits, but for women, it can have an impact on their fertility because it increases the hormone cortisol. And cortisol as a whole, and we touched on stress before in terms of we have stressful lifestyles. When we have a ongoing high level of cortisol, our body is in that fight or flight stage, and therefore it doesn't feel safe to hold a pregnancy. So that's the last thing. It shuts down your reproductive system, it shuts down your digestive system, which is why often when you are like in an anxious state, you either feel like you need to go to the toilet or you feel like you're going to be sick because your body just wants to be lighter. So it just shuts down them two main things. And so they're going back to the exercise side of things is, moderate exercise, at least 3-4 times a week, keeping doing your walking is something what we really want to focus on and aim for.
Yeah.
Apologies for interrupting this podcast, but I need to ask a favour. If you're enjoying this podcast so far, then please hit that subscribe button right now. I'll be straight up and honest that I want to see this podcast grow and flourish into something that I'm really proud of. And the only way that I can do that is with your help. So if you've ever learned anything useful from these conversations, then please return the favour by liking, rating, subscribing, and maybe even sharing it with your friends. Thanks very much. Let's get back to the episode.
You touched on it when it came to plastics. No, there's another one. There's like serious exacerbator of issues, and a lot of people don't really ever know quite why. So plastic bottles versus glass bottles, or metal, steel bottles. How is it that the plastics are getting into our system, and what is the disruption that it's causing to us?
So it's more so when plastics are, so for example, food or liquids are heated up in plastics.
So ready meals, things like that.
Exactly.
Stay away from them.
Yeah. And like if you think back to, probably when you were a lot younger, or when your mum was younger, maybe. They didn't have ready meals in plastic. Everything was just fresh and it was on the plates. So again, another reason why we're seeing problems with just our general health because of the exposure to these types of things. But microwave meals, the plastics, it leaks into the food, and then we're consuming that food, which then has a problem, which then again has the impact on your hormones. It also has an impact on sperm health as well. There's a really good program out there that shows that the impact of plastics on sperm, and it stops the sperm from actually moving. And that's obviously an important thing that we need for conception to happen. But and even every day we go to a Starbucks or a Costa Coffee or wherever, and we grab a coffee, and within that coffee cup it's lined with plastic. Although you think it's a paper cup, it's not. So again, we're consuming that quite regularly, and that's where, and then
we're consuming it every day.
Yeah, pretty much.
Even when we're trying really hard not to, it's really difficult. What are the effects of sugar when it comes to fertility? That's always one I'm really interested to know, because obviously insulin resistance is really hard, especially when you've got this food noise of constantly wanting to eat sugar and it fueling you because you're fatigued and things like that. Is there a negative impact when it comes to overconsumption of sugar?
So yeah, it does have a impact, because I mentioned about insulin resistance. When we've got too much insulin going on in our bodies, it then has that knock-on effect where it increases testosterone, and testosterone then suppresses ovulation. So that's where we see the problems happen when we are also you put on weight when you have too much sugar. You do have them slumps as well, so you get that surge when you have too much sugar. And I think another thing which is quite common as well is that, that time before your period, we tend to crave more of that type of stuff. And what we don't realise is that there's a actual reason for that. Your body, when you move into the phase 2 weeks before your period, your body begins to produce progesterone. Progesterone is a heat-inducing hormone, so your metabolism naturally increases. So you are going to want to consume more food to give you that extra energy. So it's roughly about an extra 200 calories. So that's why we crave more. We crave more food, or we feel like we're eating a lot more. But that's just a natural thing. We just tend to go for not necessarily the right thing at that time of the month. So, it's choosing the right foods to help overcome things like cravings, like your sugar cravings and that type of thing. So it's more complex carbohydrates would be better. So more like your sweet potatoes and, potatoes and that type of thing. That's going to fill you up a bit more.
You're looking at a perfect plate to be able to help you through that phase. What would be your perfect plate? What's on that perfect plate?
Okay, so I always use my hands to do this because it's just a really simple way to explain it to clients as well. So we want to see a thumb size of healthy fats.
Okay.
Yeah, we want to see a palm size of protein. We want to see a cupful of grains. And we want to see 2 portions. When I say a cupful of grains, it's also complex carbohydrates as well, which is like your sweet potatoes. And then at least 2 portions of vegetables on your plate, one of which has got to be green.
Okay.
Yeah. Because of the amount of antioxidants that are all in your leafy greens. So yeah, that's how you would build your plate to conceive.
That's a lovely little explanation. I love all of that. And if you're listening to this on Spotify and you want to go and have a little look on YouTube, all of the hand gestures will be on there. We'll make sure of it. Okay, perfect. Every bit of that, and it's natural instinct. We always talk about the female and how she can better her reproductive chances. But like we just said, you're talking 30-40% of infertility is men.
30% is male as well. Yeah.
That's what I'm saying. So 30% is male infertility or male issues with fertility, slow sperm due to plastics. It might be something that's, DNA hereditary, something that's going on. What will always baffle me when we speak to women who are on their knees, that they're doing everything. They are so desperately trying to conceive naturally. They can't afford things like IVF.
Yeah.
The option isn't available to them yet. They're trying everything that they can. They're throwing the kitchen sink at their well-being, taking all the supplements, doing the exercises, eating right. And then you say, what's your partner doing?
Yeah.
Well, what do you mean? Well, what's your partner doing to better the situation? And they just are like, and I don't think anybody thinks that it could possibly be that there's, I don't like the word issue, the load is shared, but when it comes to men, let's talk about that, because we do have male listeners and they might be suffering from aspects of infertility or struggling. So
yeah, I think a lot of the time women tend to take on that responsibility. As soon as they want to try and have a baby, they will start to do all the things that they know that they need to do, especially when it comes down to things like supplements. It's less spoken about, male fertility, and men tend to not want to talk about it. Sometimes it can be ego or just, men generally don't talk like the way women do. We will all, women will share things with their friends and family, but men tend to keep them a little bit more, closed. So the thing with male infertility is, like I say, it's 30%. It's on the rise. We are seeing more problems with it. When women come to me, that's the first thing I'll say to them is, has your partner had a sperm analysis done, a semen analysis? That's probably one of the first things that needs to happen, because whilst they might be doing everything possible to try and get pregnant, and they might, and especially on the unexplained side of things for that particular person, that woman, the answers could be on the male side of things. We always used to think as well, years ago, they used to think that it was down to the woman. The reason behind miscarriage was the woman. And again, that's not the case. Sometimes the DNA within a man's sperm can be the problem, which then again, certain testing can be done for that too, especially if someone's had reoccurring miscarriages. So we are seeing the rise in men's, but there are so many things that we can do to support that. Again, down to your diet and your lifestyle. Again, we're seeing increases in people vaping. Now, that's not just to say men vape, women vape as well. But these toxins that we're exposing ourselves to, we're more sedentary, especially people who are working from home. They're not moving about a bit, and that particular area down below needs to be cool. If they're sat down all the time, there's going to be more heat to that particular area. That's where we see the problems with sperm. Many using saunas, using hot tubs. Again, they have problems with that. Has a huge impact on sperm as well.
But all of these things, well, unless there is, like you say, unexplained, complete infertility, these things can be reworked and looked at, and you can kind of like rejuvenate your sperm.
100%. Yeah.
So what's the time frame in doing that? If a chap was to come into you and say, right, they're not swimming as well as they should be, how do we get them swimming again?
So a man's sperm takes about 72 days to get to where it needs to be. So that's what we say. So, it wouldn't be exactly on that 73rd day. Everything would be perfect. But whatever you do now, in 72 days' time, you're going to see the benefit. It's the same with a woman's egg. So women's eggs mature in 100 days' time. Mm-hmm. So that preconception phase of, making changes to your diet and lifestyle, that's when you'll start to see changes in motility, concentration, morphology. These are the parameters that we assess sperm against. That's when you'd look to start seeing improvements. Some are obviously quicker than others. Mm-hmm. Some might take a little bit longer, because it's really down to the individual. But And we talk about introducing new things and new diets and new regimes. What sort of things should we be removing from our lifestyle? So I know alcohol is probably a really big one. And a lot of people don't tend to even think of that. You go, how many units of alcohol are you consuming? And maybe you should knock that in the head. And caffeine as well. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So when would you be taking those out of the routine completely? Would you be reducing them? If so, how much by? Yeah, 100% reducing them. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, smoking is an absolute no-no. Mm-hmm. Vaping is an absolute no-no. Alcohol is just, definitely a huge reduction. Going for more like cleaner type alcohols as well. Reducing the sugar within alcohols. So, again, coming back to the PCOS part of it, if somebody is drinking alcohol, it's on the sugary side, need to swap out to something that's got less sugar in. Overall, alcohol, we want to try and eliminate it, especially during that preconception phase. But, I'm all about 80-20. So 80% of the time you are doing the things that nourish you and, making you a lot more healthier. But 20% of the time you're doing the things that bring you joy. And that doesn't necessarily mean just alcohol. That might mean that you get a takeaway, you might get a pizza, because, you can't 100% no one's perfect. You are going to have times where you fall off the wagon, but it's about getting yourself back on the wagon and, having that balance in your what you're eating on a day-to-day basis.
And from a supplementation route, have you got any kind of like fundamentals that you would be introducing as a supplement routine?
Yeah, 100. There's the standard ones that I always recommend are definitely a prenatal, but one that contains methylfolate, not folic acid.
Yeah.
There's omega-3, vitamin D, and then magnesium as well.
Well, that's music to my ears.
I thought it might be.
Yeah. So you're thinking a nice magnesium bisglycinate would be a good one.
Yeah, it's got obviously so many different benefits to it, and you guys know that yourselves about. It's just really good for periods, menstrual health, so that and sleep. It's just so good. So
when it comes to period health, what are the benefits of magnesium for period health?
It can help reduce PMS, and that's one of the main things. And then that and period pain, that it's really good for like inflammation. So that is one of the main reasons why I recommend that to the majority of people. So yeah.
And a lot of people at this phase, if they are under a lot of stress, they might not think that they are. But when you're saying about cortisol levels being high and then sleep being very poor because they're anxious and awake, the benefits of a really good night's sleep are so underrated.
Yeah.
When people go, oh my God, I slept for like a full 8 hours. It's the first time I've done that in absolute months and I feel like I could take on the world. What's the importance of a good sleep quality when it comes to fertility?
Well, it has a number of different impacts. Having good sleep quality helps with when we're eating. So when we don't have enough sleep, we tend to our hormones that are for our appetite, they go out of whack. So therefore, you tend to go for more. You crave more for all the foods that aren't so great. Sleep is when you regenerate, you heal throughout the night. So and repair. So we want good quality sleep for that. Another thing as well is we have our hormone melatonin. So melatonin is our sleepy hormone. But what melatonin is also really good for is egg quality. So if you are getting enough sleep, you've got enough melatonin in your body, then that's going to support that. So that's why when it comes to fertility, we want to make sure that you are getting some really good quality Z's.
Amazing. When it comes to unexplained fertility, so that's when they've gone through all the hoops, they're really looking as to what this issue is and they just can't find it. What's the process from a medical stance? When do you get that definitive, it's unexplained fertility? What's the time scale of that for the average couple or for the average solo person that's wanting to explore fertility?
Yeah, it can vary, I think, because I suppose it all comes down to the area that you live as well. So waiting lists for appointments to fertility clinics, IVF, that type of thing. So, it can range from anything from 12 months to 2 years for them to then, do their explorations, understand whether it's PCOS, endometriosis, whether there's male factor infertility. And if all that comes back fine and there's no other particular reason, then they'll label it unexplained. So, it can vary.
So, some people that can try and just can never quite conceive. You have some people that can try, conceive and then sadly miscarry. Is there a generalised number of miscarriages that would be accepted by someone like the NHS for them then to start exploring, or is it just a person by person basis?
So they generally don't do anything until you've had 3, which is quite sad, really. Who in the right mind wants to go through 3 miscarriages before they'll explore and understand what might be going on. And I've got a relative most recently who had 2 miscarriages. A third actually became a successful pregnancy, but that for her was mentally, physically draining. And it's like you've got no explanation as to why this might be happening. So then when you are going for when you do become pregnant again, there's that whole what if, what if it happens again to me, and will I have to go through it all again? And you get more anxious, more stressed about it, and that's something that we want to try and keep to a minimum at that time, isn't it? Is your stress.
I think stress and anxiety come into it, I know personally, before you even get to that stage of I'm pregnant. It's, I'm older, I have this problem, it might be a key factor. The worry aspect of it and the stress and the anxiety, can that also be a hindrance? Can stress be a big issue when it comes to fertility and kind of preventing, perhaps?
Yeah, so I mentioned earlier about the whole, your body doesn't feel safe to conceive. It also has an impact on your progesterone hormone stress, because the receptors that, it binds to, cortisol can get in the way. We have something called a pregnenolone steal, which then means that there isn't enough progesterone that's made. That then means that the lining of your uterus doesn't stay maintained to hold that particular pregnancy, and therefore your lining will begin to shed. And therefore that's where we start to see like miscarriages or, pregnancies not happening. There can be a number of different reasons why miscarriages can happen. It could be hormones, it could be sperm DNA might be a problem. It might be the environment, that the uterus environment might be not in a great place. Vaginal microbiomes is something that is up and coming at the moment, in terms of that could be potential reasons why miscarriages are actually happening. So there's a number of different factors that come into play with it, and then vitamin and mineral deficiencies as well, too. Yeah,
I think we're all pretty deficient in a lot of things. The supplement industry has obviously skyrocketed, and a lot of people are now noticing that they do need to supplement. There's depletion in soils, there's no magnesium in the soils, hence the reason why everybody should be taking a magnesium, and the supplement list that you've just listed beforehand. So we'll pop those as well on the link when it comes to the YouTube channel, so that everyone can have a little look on what they are. So I suppose the question for me is that you've got, let's say you've had however many miscarriages, awful. It sounds really flippant to say it, but that's where we are right now as society. The amount of women that will reach out to me and go, I am genuinely on my third or fourth miscarriage, unexplained, we don't know what it is. IVF is there as an option for some people. They're very, very fortunate people that are given that opportunity. Some people opt to do it privately. We've got celebrities that are putting GoFundMe pages together for the people to help fund their fertility journey. Some people are just not that fortunate, don't have the funds necessary to do that. If they were to come to you, what's the journey like from the introduction to Alex and moving forward? What would you recommend?
So women tend to come to me because they want to try naturally, but then they might also be going for IVF. So either or they've had IVF, it's failed. So there's loads of different scenarios that come into play. And it's, when they come to me, I have a number of different services that I offer. So for example, I will work with women on a 3-month basis, and we really have an individual tailored plan. We really try to get to the root cause of what's going on, and then put the strategies in place to support their fertility. Women can come to me, we'll have a 90-minute session, and I can give them things that will support them in terms of like what I think might be areas of focus that they need to focus on, and then they'll take away that plan and they'll go and implement that themselves. And then I've got things like that are guides that like are low cost guides, again, that will support people. So preparing for IVF, for example, they can then take them away, because I know that it can be expensive, especially when they're going for IVF and if they're having to fund it themselves. So there's got to be something for everybody out there. So they're the types of things that I offer to people. But I always tell people that I'm sort of like a bridge. So you walk out of your doctor's office or you walk out of the fertility clinic and you've been told you've got PCOS, or you've had another round of failed IVF. You come out and you're like, I have no idea what I need to do now. I've been told in the example of PCOS that I need to change my diet and my lifestyle, or I need to lose weight, or whatever it might be. But how? How do I do that? And sort of, there's no blueprint to get you from A to B. And I think that's where a fertility coach comes into it, is that I will help you put that blueprint in place to get you from A to B through the diet and the lifestyle changes, through the supplements, because the supplements are like the sprinkling on top of the cake. And that's where we see successful pregnancies or successful IVF.
You touched on it before. You have got a really nice success story that you were sharing recently. I always like to end all episodes on something that is a high, and I would love to hear the success story that you were referencing before.
So there was a lady that I was working with. She was actually based in New York. So she come to me and she had PCOS. She'd been told that her only option was IVF, and that she would never be able to get pregnant naturally. At the time, she was actually living in Texas. So when she went to the doctors, they told her, which is a bit of a shocker, that the next time she goes to the fridge and opens the fridge, she needs to think cake or baby. And the doctor also said that she owes it to her partner to give him a child, which for her was absolutely devastating, because to be told that she couldn't get pregnant naturally and that obviously everything was up to her was just heartbreaking for her. I'm glad to say that they never ever went back to that doctor's office again, that couple. So then she contacted me. We started to work together, focused on the PCOS, focused on the inflammation, making sure that everything she was doing was right in terms of her diet and her lifestyle. And thankfully, 3-4 months into, and this woman hadn't had a period, bearing in mind, she messaged me and she said, could I be showing signs of ovulation even though I've not had a period yet? And I said, yeah, absolutely. I said, it's showing that your body is starting to work. 2 weeks later, she got a positive pregnancy test, which was just so amazing, because obviously she'd been told not so much nice things. And she's got a healthy little boy now who is probably around about 12 to 18 months.
Oh, that's beautiful.
Yeah.
And it must bring you such satisfaction to know that you've been such a key part in that.
Yeah, it does. It does give me satisfaction. It is lovely to hear that I can help people. But at the end of the day, they're the people putting the things in place. They're doing the work. All I can do is coach them, give them that accountability. And that's the bonus of like coaching as well, is that you've got that accountability. Somebody's there being your biggest cheerleader to, keep you going through the whole fertility journey, because it's so stressful, so overwhelming, so frustrating. There's so much out there, you just don't know what to put in place.
Let me tell you now, the biggest thing that we support at Sera is being a champion for our customers and being the cheerleader that they can't be for themselves.
Yeah.
Because what you've just said there, we'll often have interactions like that. They've been to a GP, the GPs just kind of like fob them off, which, rightly or wrongly, the GPs don't have an awful lot of education when it comes to menopause or anything of a gynecological nature. They just want to be seen to be helping. So by giving them a prescription for something like a sertraline, and that might be, all that they think that they should do in that day.
Yeah.
But and I know that the lady that you just spoken about will tell you, just having someone in your corner just to listen, to absorb, and to give some kind of positive reinforcement to that emotional support will probably be more than anything medicinal, supplementational, anything like that.
Yeah.
Sometimes people just really do need a cheerleader. And I'm so glad that you're out there cheering on people that are struggling, because it's something I'm incredibly passionate about, as we are at Sera. Alex, thank you for today. I genuinely could carry on talking to you for hours. I've learned so much from you, and I know that everyone that's listening to this is going to have learned something too. I want people to be able to come to you if they need you, which I think there are a few people in your need right now. So where can they find you?
So it's the Fertility Coach on Instagram. I've also got a website that's actually www.riseshinehealth.com. But that's my main platform is Instagram. Where you can find me on there.
Amazing. I'm going to get the lovely little fundamental list of supplements. We're going to make sure that we log them somewhere. We'll make sure there's a signposted post on our socials. But thank you so much.
Thank you.
I've really enjoyed talking to you, and I'm sure that we'll work together again in the future.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks.